hands. Move on.
So sorry about that.
It's okay. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. It says August, but are they should be October, right? Yeah, October meetings.
Those are in the chat now as well.
You can take the time to review if you would like, and when ready, a committee member can motion for any edits or motion for approval. I just have one edit under G, just the spelling of the names, S-A-H-R-A.
Thank you. We'll make that amendment.
And I suppose I will make a motion to approve the minutes with the one edit. Is there a second?
I can second.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay, roll call vote. Simone,
Yes.
Josh,
Abstain.
Riley,
Yes.
Paulette,
Hello, yes.
oh, we're doing a roll call vote to approve the meeting minutes. Oh, was that your vote? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't know. You said it questioningly, it seemed. Okay, Paul,
Yes.
motion passes.
Great, thank you. Meeting item number 4, homeless system updates. This is open to anyone that has a homeless system update, anything that is happening that's new or changing that would be beneficial for the committee to know. Can you please share that now? Anything exciting or not exciting?
Margot Ernst has joined the city of Berkeley, and she's going to be replacing Kristen Lee's position as manager for HHCS. That's pretty exciting. She started last week.
All right, nice. Thank you for sharing. Any other updates? Move on to item number 5, the Youth Action Board with Hannah and Paul and representatives. Pass the mic.
Cool, thank you, Simone. And hey, Simone, I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. So I am going to kick it because we have a full house today with the YAB. So I will step back and let them speak to our updates, which you can see are our community kickoff that we've been planning for our YGP work, adultism, and so yes, Paul, and our planning grant budget that we've been working on for YGP. Paul, Tony, or Sahro, tell the
I could do a quick update. We me, Hannah, and Brian met with a couple consultants for youth action board and trying to finalize some of the things on the budget, such as materials and stuff like that. So that was a little bit of what was going on.
Yeah, and just for everyone up to, so we have been, you may not, you should know, but in case you don't, we have been granted the youth housing demonstration, a youth homelessness demonstration program grant by HUD, and have been awarded $6.5 million for the county, which has not come in just yet, but will once we produce a coordinated community plan with all of you all and other partners and more young people leading that work. And so what Tony was speaking to was the planning grant funds that we have been trying to work out how we're going to spend it. And we've been really thinking about having a consultant, someone who's well-versed in youth-led and youth-driven programming and organizing to support us in this process. And so we've been meeting with some consultants to find out who will be the best fit for that. And then, yes, we're planning a community kickoff, and I will let one of them tell you all a little bit about what that means. That will happen December 10th, and we hope all of you will be in attendance. Paul, Sato, Tony.
Mom.
Well, our community kickoff, give me 1 second.
Well, this is mixed up.
Or my
And
6-year-old.
also this. Also, this is really cool mixed up.
Wow, very cool. So we're having a community kickoff on Friday, December 10th from 8:30 to 12:30. And that will be really an opportunity to bring in all of you and all of the folks that you help us identify, everyone that we want to have as a part of this planning process for YHGP, which must be a collective collaborative process with all types of people, from our agency folks to our boots on the ground CBOs and everyone in between, led by our young people, right? Led by our young folks that have experienced insecure housing and homelessness in the county and really can drive us in the direction to figure out what we need to do to fill the gaps in our services, programs, resources. And so December 10th will be really to understand what YHGP is, understand what the coordinated community plan is that we have to produce and submit to HUD by March, and kind of really think about what your role can be in that. We'll be having a series of community conversations and focus groups and stakeholder meetings, just to kind of to really figure out what in every kind of area or subpopulation of what it means to experience homelessness as a young person, what the gaps are, what the challenges have been, from the experience of being unhoused to service providers who are trying to support our young people and the challenges they're facing within their organizations, and really build out a network. And so December 10th, you all will be getting an invitation either from myself or from the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination, from Carrie Abbott's folks, maybe Anna Erickson. And then the last update that I will request one of the YAD members speak to is adultism. And that's a training that we received from our YHGP technical assistants. They came out, we hosted them for a 2-day training several weeks ago. And they trained us up on adultism, which is new for me, a learning for me, something that I'm always constantly checking myself on as an adult ally, and really just understanding what adultism is and how it plays into youth adult collaborative projects, programs, and practices. So tell us about adultism, a YAD member.
I'll speak to the adultism.
And I can after too. Go ahead, Paul.
So adultism, the main focus is that some young people are often mistreated because of their age. And if you think about it, you realize that except for prisoners and a few other institutionalized groups, young people are more controlled than any other group in society. And common statements are, "You're so smart to be 16 or don't touch it, you'll break it. And pretty much our main goals is to move away from adultism within the YAB workspace. And I'll let Sarah pick
Yeah,
up.
thank you, Paul. And I want to explain the authentic youth collaboration philosophy and why it's important to our work to end youth homelessness. So the first question is, what does authentic partnership look like for youth? And for example, it can look like be intentional about your decision-making power that youth have in your work. Also, that youth are experts of their own truth. And when asking young people to be involved in your work, hear them out and build a replicable relationship where you honor their experiences, allowing experiences and ideas to inform the process. And yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you both. So like adultism in and of itself and youth collaboration in and of itself is a huge shift, right? It's a huge shift that needs to happen in all of our workspaces. And so, you know, it's just one of those things that's part of this YHCP opportunity as we're thinking about, you know, the needs of our young folks, really understanding that it's not just learning, taking what they know and putting it into a program, but really like supporting them in program design and just like collaborating all the way through and what that means for us in our roles as, you know, gatekeepers or gate openers and adult allies. So thank you, everyone.
And if you guys are interested on hearing more, we'll explain more briefly on the community kickoff. We will explain how do we fight adultism and how we can avoid barriers and have a authentic youth collaboration. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Youth Action Board. Thank you, Hannah. Any questions or comments from the committee about what was spoken to just now? Right. Well, hopefully we'll all be able to join their December 10th meeting and learn a bit for ourselves and also learn about how we can support this new intervention helping homeless youth. Item number 6, I'll pass it to Chelsea for a governance update.
Thank you and welcome everyone. I didn't get a chance to say hello or greetings earlier, so I want to welcome you all to this meeting. We have such a great turnout, so thank you for joining us. I'm Chelsea Andrews, the Executive Director for Everyone Home. I also want to echo sentiment in regards to supporting our YAB. Thank you for coming today, and Hannah for the great work you're doing. They are working really hard and thinking intentionally about how we reach as many people as possible for that community meeting. And so it is important as a COC that we show our support and show up. So please stay tuned for that announcement on how to join that kickoff event on December 10th. And so I'm going to be swift with my updates because we do have a lot of substantive areas to cover today. Oh, I see Simone, your hand's up. Unless you were giving me a high five. That's what that could be. Okay. So then I'll transition into my updates really briefly for you all. And there are 3 items on the agenda. And I think just to move things along, I'll walk through all of them one by one here. And so the first update has to do with governance. As you all know, I remain committed to all of the committees to provide updates on a monthly basis on where we are. I will share that we're close, but not there yet. We had a leadership board meeting yesterday where we were 1 person short of quorum. So we polled, we deliberated. We're hoping that at our December 9th meeting, we will get to final on these outstanding housekeeping questions. But the areas that are still outstanding that, again, there were good discussion and deliberations on, include discussing when and if 20 people per household. So we will be able to provide updates on that. And then the last item is the I put the wrong term here, but an alternate and or proxy voting is appropriate. The frequency of meetings for the leadership board. There's a number of policies that the leadership board is revisiting, the code of conduct, recruitment guidance for leadership board members, recruitment guidance for notice of funding opportunity members, as well as roles and responsibilities across our COC. And we've gotten to the point where we also have to talk about what expansion staffing and budget needs will need to be put in place in order to actually implement our new governance structure, and also beginning to build out a transition plan. The plan includes creating a working group that will begin to meet in January of next year. It's anticipated that the working group will have about 10 members, including representatives from the leadership board and our committee chairs, and we'll be meeting to go through the election process, staffing, budget, work plan transitions, etc. So we will continue to provide updates along the way. Once the leadership board does vote on and approve the revised charter, there will be a month, because our governance charter requires 30 days notice for the community to have an opportunity to review, weigh in. We anticipate having Zoom drop-ins and videos that outline the proposed changes, and then a community meeting. I want to just reiterate that everyone is welcome and a part of Everyone Home. There's no fee for membership. Showing up to a community meeting, writing your name on the roster list makes you a part of our COC, and ultimately gives you the ability to vote on where we stand with our governance and other elected positions. And then the goal is to plan out our transition to launch next summer. I'll pause and ask if there are any questions on that aspect of what I just presented on.
I'm wondering, Chelsea, if you can maybe just briefly explain what opportunities people may have to join committees in the summer.
Absolutely. And so a part of the transition plan will be creating an opportunity for information updates on when the elections process will take place, how you can express interest. But for each of the committees, there will be an opportunity for new committee members. And as you may recall, the board also voted on and approved a third of each committee and leadership board being comprised of people with lived expertise. So we are extremely excited. We anticipate and will need your support in terms of bringing in close to 35 new people with lived expertise. I'll also give a little plug. Everyone Home recently was awarded a grant from San Francisco Foundation to continue our efforts for bringing in people with lived expertise. And we will be doing an academy, starting an academy session in the beginning of next year to get people geared up and trained and ready to support and participate on committees. So if you're interested in committees, stay tuned. There will be a lot of information coming up in the near future on how you can engage. And I also just want to share, just like so many people are here today, all of our committees are open to the public. And so you can attend our meetings, you could see the agendas, you could see the minutes from those meetings. And so even if you're not committing on to join a full committee, you might want to still come to those committee meetings so that you could stay informed. So we encourage that as well. Related to NOFO, extremely excited that we have gotten to the end here. Our partners with HCD, I think Riley's on the line. He's the one who actually got our application fully uploaded and submitted early on Friday. Today is the deadline across the nation. Also, of course, as you all know, we worked with home-based consultants and did automate our system this year. There were some areas of opportunity for us to improve in the next round. And so we anticipate within the next week getting out a survey to the community for those who participated in this process, as well as to our NOFO committee, who were fantastic in terms of how we could improve. But we have submitted an application for the full amount that we're eligible for, $43,000, $78,608, and we're very pleased to, of course, share with you all that all of the renewal projects are in Tier 1, will be fully funded. And then in Tier 2, there was effort and a commitment to trying to ensure that we enhance our HMIS and provide the support needed. So $1.5 million is being recommended to support our HMIS. And then there's 3 additional projects that you see here: rapid rehousing for TAY victims of violence, rapid rehousing for LGBTQ+ TAY victims of violence, as well as a new DV coordinated entry project. So we're really hoping that these projects get the funding that we are requesting. And the final rating and ranking and full application is now updated on our website. Any questions?
Wow, this is Hannah. Congratulations. This is awesome. Get great work on getting this in. Love to see the rapid rehousing and the TAY for both areas. Yes. And just curious, the DV community coordinated entry, would that be like, because I know there's a lack of DV questions to the coordinated entry, would that be like redesigning? Because I know there's now the coordinated entry 2.0. Can you just speak to that, like just a little bit?
Sure. And I'm trying to see, I'm unable to see who's all the folks that are in the Zoom room to see if there's someone who is in the Zoom room who wants to speak to this. But this particular proposal was to really address a gap in our system, in the sense that even when we had our emergency housing vouchers, realizing how challenging it was to coordinate across the board and get our referrals out. And so the county, in partnership with, and I don't want to get the project wrong, with one of our nonprofit providers, we're working together to create, I want to say that this was Liz Varela's, and I'm pulling a blank, so maybe someone could chime in. But this was an effort to partner in terms of how do we expand our DV coordinated entry across the county.
Hi, Chelsea, this is Tunisia, and you got it right. It's Building Futures with an Family Violence Law Center would be a sub-grantee to figure out how to create a entry point or a coordinated entry point for victims of domestic violence or various forms of gender-based violence.
Thank you so much, Tunisia.
Thank
you for the question, Hannah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so what happens, of course, we submit our application. We anticipate in March, around that time frame, that we will receive a response from HUD, and ultimately that comes back to this committee for review. Also, I wanted to share that while we haven't yet received our formal approval, one of the roles that Everyone Home plays is whenever there is a transfer request for our grantee to transfer that project to another project, it comes through Everyone Home. And in the past, I think Everyone Home has facilitated that process, signed a letter of support, because the COC has to provide a letter of support. But that won't happen, I think, until some time. But I wanted to check in with the HUD CoC, because it's my expectation that this request might come while we're on recess before the HUD CoC meets again. And so I wanted to share with you all what is being requested and see if I can get support for the letter that would need to come from Everyone Home in regards to that request. Currently, one of our providers, the Fred Finch Youth Center, is requesting a transfer of their Turning Point Transitional Housing Program for homeless young adults to the Youth Employment Partnership. And they've identified some challenges in regards to their operational funding streams not being able to support the work they do. Their grant is in the amount of $422,579. And they have been, and we have been facilitating meetings with the Youth Employment Partnership to inquire if they'd be interested in seeking that that transfer, and they've expressed interest in doing so. There's a formal process with HUD. I did have a quick slide that showed, and I don't have a representative here if there's a lot of questions about this particular project, but what YEP did provide was what they would be utilizing the project for, and it's the expansion of their dormitories that they're building out now that they expect, although it said opening in January, I think they were expecting a July timeframe. And so this is where the transfer would go. And would like to, just in terms of high level approval, to craft a letter of support for that transfer so that we do not lose those grant funds in our system. So this is actually an action item, and I'm seeking a motion to approve a letter of support is what we would have to provide to support this transfer.
Does anyone have any questions about the transfer or either of the programs or why this is happening before motion? If not, I will make a motion to approve the transfer of the Fred Finch CLC funds to YEP for their youth transitional housing program.
I'll second.
Thank you. Katie, can you do a roll call? Thanks.
Okay, Simone,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Riley,
I have a question. See this on the agenda as an action item. Is that an oversight, or was this added later? Did I miss it?
It's listed as number 7, under 7.
It's as an update.
The version I have says update and action item.
Okay, then I must not have got this is the most recent one I have. Okay. I'm in favor of it. It's just I didn't see it as an action item.
Okay, it's also, and I do know, and I meant to apologize for this earlier, there was a delay in getting the materials out to the committee. So the agenda did come out to everyone yesterday. It's also in the chat. It was published, however, on our website. So it does meet the Brown Act requirements and our public policy in terms of putting everyone on notice about that.
So I'm going to share my screen. The agenda that was emailed is different than this agenda. So we're on 7, NOFO update and action item. On the agenda that was mailed out, number 7 is practitioner's report card. So it
I'm
is.
so sorry about that. I did not realize. Okay, well, yes, so everyone might want to have a look at the version that is in the chat, because apparently the one that went out was not correct. Sorry about that. Shall we proceed with the vote, or?
Well,
yes.
it was agendized. It is on the website. We did apologize for the late notice, but if there's no hesitancy, I would ask for an opportunity to receive a vote. I will share that this has not in the past come to the committee for vote. I'm coming to the committee just in full transparency to make sure that I have the support. But in the past, those letters, those transfers would be signed by CLC staff, actually. So.
I think you can continue, Katie, with the vote. But thank you for pointing that out, Riley, because I was actually looking at a different agenda too.
Okay, so where do you land, Riley? Yay, nay?
Yeah, I voted yes, but I've just
Okay.
questioned. It was a question I had.
Paulette,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Tunisia,
Abstain.
and Marnell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, was that everything for the NOFO overview?
It is. My update is complete. I've gone through a few different agenda items there. I still remain open if there's any questions or if anyone wants to put something in the chat I could respond to as well. I know we have a couple of visitors with us today, so I want to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Chelsea. Move on to agenda item number 8, the pit count with Katie Haverly, and I'm not sure if Peter is here or not.
I believe we had them a little later on the agenda. I don't believe they're here yet.
Okay, they plan to come at 4:10, I mean 3:10. Were they?
I missed that, Simone, I'm sorry.
What was that?
I didn't know if you asked me a question, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, I was just saying, were they planning on coming at 3:10?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Tirza. I also recognized that the agenda was moving quickly. So I asked Mike and Nick to arrive at 3. So I'm not sure how we want to handle that we're ahead.
We can move on. Well, we can't really move on because Colleen's not here either.
Right.
I would just say in the future, as we've had these problems the last few months, that when we have guests, that we don't give them an exact time slot.
Okay.
Because then they show up at that time slot.
I would
know that
if in the future, if we have guests, that we front load them, have them come on first. So that
that's a good idea too. Yeah, I agree.
Because to try to gauge when they will come on is almost impossible. So
That's definitely true. The problem tends to be that, all of these people are very busy. So asking them to arrive specifically when the meeting starts or really any given time can be a challenge. We're kind of working around a lot of different busy people's schedules. So that just kind of poses a persistent issue. But
we can talk about it more in our planning session about how to figure that out. Yeah, everyone else is a guest besides our work plan, which I don't want to kick everyone off the meeting before we have our guests speak. So
I just text Mike and Nick to see if they could come now. So I will let you know as soon as I hear a response.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, of course.
I can open for any questions or updates, some additional updates that I could think through and provide at this time. One update I can share is that on tomorrow, we are, tomorrow, Thursday? Yes. I will be a member of a panel with the mayor of Oakland, Mayor Schaaf, as well as Tamika Moss, talking about homelessness, in particular focusing in on senior homelessness in Oakland. And it's an open event that's free to the public. It does look like there will be a good amount of attendance and interest in this issue and in this topic. And so that's something that maybe we can share with you all how you could participate in that. I'll also indicate that we've had, although we're going to talk about the pit count in terms of methodology, there has been some really good participation along the way in our engagement with the community. Katie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the Zoom spot. If you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing with the HUD CoC committee what we've been doing, what kind of engagements we've had and meetings to date, and in the event that there's any questions we could answer.
Sure. So we have actually had 5 community meetings already for the point in time count. And they have covered topics related to the survey, to outreach teams, guide recruitment, the youth count. And I know many of you have been involved and participated in those meetings. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us and giving your feedback. I've also done some presentations for cities and helping better explain to them the changes that are happening with the point in time count this year that you'll hear about today, and the presentation related to the methodology due to COVID concerns. But we have received commitments from almost every city in Alameda County to have a designated city regional coordinator to be able to help with the support in engaging outreach teams to work in more high density census tracts for the point in time count. And Kathy and Thea will explain this more in their presentation. But we have had a great community response to these meetings. And oh, I see Kathy's here, which is great. Welcome, Kathy. But Kathy and Peter will have more to share with you about the methodology, but I'm happy to answer any questions after their presentation. And just to share with you, Kathy, we are running a little early in this meeting, so I don't know if you would be prepared to get started with your presentation.
Part of who you need is Peter. I just texted him to see if he can hop on early. I can do a quick little intro, but really I've got like 2 minutes of the time and he's got the rest of the time. So.
Okay.
Well, let's just pause based on what's been presented and see if there's any questions about PIT or NOFO or any other aspects of what we've gone over so far that anyone on the committee or the public has questions on.
I just have a question about the YEP. I've never heard about the Youth Employment Partnership. So if someone can just give me a brief background of like why or the history behind it.
Unfortunately, I'm not.
I can actually answer that question.
Thank you.
So I partnered with YEP in the past. They offer services to Oakland residents in finding jobs, doing job readiness programs, getting them to build resumes, cover letters, then employing them through sites that are partnered with them, similar to like a temp agency. So you can get valuable experience in the community. They serve youth ages 18 to 24, I believe. And they usually help them, you know, get jobs and move forward with their career goals.
Thank you, Antonio.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio. That was helpful.
Another piece that's unique and special about this transfer is that they are providing new transitional housing in East Oakland, whereas most support for youth it's more downtown West Oakland area. So that's another piece that's unique and something that's needed.
So another question popped up in my head. How does the HUD CoC play in part of the Youth Employment Partnership?
So we don't play a part in their program per se. They are going to be, if this, I believe the motion passed. So they are going to be utilizing funds that the HUD CoC has to vote on and approve the use for. And they're going to be using those funds for this new housing initiative. But YEP's been around for many years and they are separate entity from the HUD CoC. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
All right. I don't know, is there anything that we can start with the pit count? I don't think we have had much conversation about it. So is there an overview that we can start with, and maybe the volunteer opportunity? People can sign up, how they can sign up. Maybe we can start there.
Sure. I don't know if Kathy, would you want to get started, and hopefully by the time you're ready, Peter will be joining us. And we can field questions if the timing's not quite right.
I feel like Peter will be on in 1 minute because he said 5 minutes when I texted him. So yes, we can just go ahead and get started on, I can kind of do just a quick little intro and hopefully we'll have him on then.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. So the methodology that Alameda County has used shifted in the years between 2015 and 2017. Since 2017, we have used the services of Applied Survey Research, which is a firm based, they have several offices in California, but I think they're headquartered mainly in the Watsonville area. And they do all of the research projects also for Sonoma County, Napa County, San Francisco, Santa Clara, Alameda, and one other kind of northern Bay Area county. And the methodology that we are using is what is referred to in kind of HUD language as a street blitz, where we go out and have teams that cover all of the 360 census tracts in Alameda County. This year, we are continuing to stick to that same methodology of covering every single census tract with a team of volunteers who are going out and doing a visual count in the early morning hours, and then having that augmented by a random sampling survey that is done in the 2 weeks following the enumeration that takes place on January 25th in the year 2022. While we are keeping that methodology, that will give us some consistency of data. And at the same time, there are some modifications that we are including this year that you'll hear in a little bit more detail from Peter. We are looking at, as we do every year, for some process improvements. We always want to kind of take what we've done in the past year and make sure that we're improving any bumps, hiccups really in the road related to that. So this year we will have some electronic tools. We'll have maps available for our survey team electronically, and the tally form, instead of being paper-based that they record the enumeration on, it will be on a smartphone-based app. And also some better kind of sign-up processes where people can have a little bit more opportunity to select from available tracks that they want to sign up for. In addition to that, we're embedding in a race and equity focus this year, both in some of the structure and wording of the questions, as well as in our analytics, to be able to have a little bit more look at data disaggregated by race and ethnicity. We are continuing to pay attention to our subpopulations, particularly unaccompanied youth and young adults, and our unsheltered families. And so making some modifications in outreach to those particular populations to ensure that the work on the day of the count is more inclusive of those particular subpopulations that are extraordinarily challenging to count in a visual count process. We're also making some changes in terms of releasing data sooner and having data more available and broken down by jurisdictions. So we're really excited. I'm personally very excited about that piece of it, and being able to put data in communities' hands earlier for planning efforts. And then the big piece in the room that we're making some accommodations around is really the COVID environment, making sure that our volunteer protocols, our what is the eligibility to even be a volunteer, are all compliant with the public health directives related to COVID. So those are some of the advancements that we are excited about and putting into place this year. The biggest shifts really are related to the COVID environment and what it would look like to have volunteers kind of matched with guides. Previously, we had a very centralized approach where guides and volunteers and a team from Everyone Home and ASR and myself met at large gathering sites the morning of the count, starting at about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And then we made teams and did site assignments then on the spot, and people went out. This year, because in part of COVID, we are using a more decentralized approach where we're making teams in advance and where we are also working to get people their site assignments in advance, and where we are relying more on our outreach teams more heavily than we have in past counts. We had an outreach team meeting and got some good participation from those that were there yesterday, but we did not have all of the outreach teams that I would have hoped we would have had on that call. So we have some follow-up work to do with the outreach teams. But this year, I would say that is the biggest shift in how we are staffing. This methodology and this count is to be even more reliant on our outreach teams to take some of those census tracts that have the highest density of people, that have particularly challenging environments to get to, those that have a lot of issues of trust, or where they are clustered, where you couldn't necessarily see from the outside of how many people and how many unsheltered structures are inside. And so really working with our outreach teams that have that depth of knowledge. We are asking this year outreach teams to also be responsible for recruiting some of our people with lived experience, so that since we are doing a decentralized launch, outreach teams can work with the people experiencing homelessness that they recruit, that they know, that they engage. And so there is less awkwardness and more of a welcoming environment between the guides and the outreach teams that are staffing some of those areas. I am hoping that that gave enough time for Peter to get settled in. Peter, I was just doing a high level overview of some of the things that are consistent and the same this year, as well as a little sneak preview of some of the areas that will be shifting. And so I'm going to turn it over for Peter to talk us through the PowerPoint that was delivered to you all and kind of prepare that synopsis of the methodology that we will be asking the COC committee to approve. Peter, do you need me to screen share or?
No, I'm hoping that you've got it up and we'll work off your deck if that's okay.
Sure.
And then just to embellish a little bit on what Kathy was saying, one of the nice things that has happened with the HEAP and cash money has been an invigoration of the outreach programs throughout the county. And we certainly, saw that significantly when Kathy and the team put together the list of all the agencies and shared it with us. It went into multiple pages of programs, and we didn't necessarily see a list that long several years ago. So the tapping into a group of field experts that are interacting with our target population every day is a great opportunity that we're going to integrate into our planning this year. And it's not a reaction to COVID. It's a real positive movement toward getting more experts on the team. And then the other thing that we really like about about this program, this approach, is that it does move us more toward localization of our field efforts, so that we're doing more integrated regional organization and planning between outreach groups, jurisdictions, and other NGOs within the local region that have a better understanding and feel for the rhythm of homelessness in their local area. So those are some of the benefits in planning. It's also very consistent with directives and recommendations from HUD as to the importance and value of integrating outreach teams into the PID efforts. And it was one of the major findings of all the communities that did conduct unsheltered counts in 2021. And all of those that felt they were successful said the key to their success was organizing around their outreach efforts that were in place. So for the benefit of some of you that may not be as familiar with what we did before, I'll just briefly highlight, the profile of 2017, 2019 PIT counts. Multiple PIT count day sites that regionally based, which would be organizational, what we called deployment sites, where we would gather our guides, our community volunteers, and program and outreach staff to meet. We'd assemble teams and send them out. We in 2019 we had 164 lived experience guides recruited by Everyone Home staff. We had just under 500 volunteers. We organized our routes by census tract. There are 360 tracts. That number has not changed. And I have on the screen a little distribution of where those are. We put the teams together on the day of, generally 4-hour routes, 2 to 3 person teams with a guide, hopefully on most teams, each team 2 to 3 tracks, paper tally sheets, and a post count quota survey of roughly, I think it was 12 to 1,400 surveys were administered in both unsheltered locations and sheltered locations. So flash forward to 2022, and Kathy gave a little window of this. We're going to again retain our full our commitment to a full coverage, what they call the Blitz methodology, and enumerate all 360 census tracts. We're going to have very few and limited day sites and replace that with pre-assignment in a virtual route management system that will be informed and organized with GIS software and route management software. Will be compliant in the COVID environment with public health engagement guidelines, and working through the guidelines, especially that have been established with the outreach organizations, because they've long held talks and discussions with public health to make sure their outreach efforts are in compliance. Generally, we see roughly 3 strata of efforts. Outreach team would be 1 strata and go after higher density tracts. We're looking, depending on what sort of volunteer and program staff engagement we'll be able to recruit. It's possible that we may have to extend the route times from 4 hours, which we did in previous years as a goal, to longer routes, 4 to 6 hours, to get better productivity out of the teams we have. There'll be some teams which will be organized around program staff and potentially some guides that they're familiar with. And then for some low density tracks, those tracks will go to all volunteer teams. For example, in 2019, there were 72 tracks that had 0 values. No persons were noted. And those are, for a variety of reasons, those would be volunteer tracks that we would want to visit again, but we wouldn't necessarily put our outreach team, our expert street engagement people on those low density tracks. Just a working goal for us right now is we're hoping that of the 360 tracks that we have in Alameda County, that roughly 250 might be covered by the outreach guide teams. And that's what we're hoping for. And then the remaining 100 plus teams would be covered by the volunteers and some of the program staff teams. There will be some guides that will be recruited by outreach staff, and we don't think we'll be up to the 165 guides that we had in 2019, but and that's mainly because many outreach teams feel that they have that knowledge that would replace what the guides might have, but we're encouraging all of the outreach teams to integrate guides because we do think they add a lot of value. We talked about the general volunteer participation, and one of the big changes this year will be that we're asking that all volunteers who respond to our sign up request do so as a team. So whether it's a family-based team or a work-based team or just a neighborhood local circle of friend team, but basically people should sign up as the car group that you're willing and able to be comfortable with in a close quarters environment. Again, subject to public health considerations, but you'll be able to be comfortable in your team activities. Our count day is planned for January 25th, and the start time will generally be about daybreak, about 5 to 6 p.m. There'll be some flexibility on start times based on neighborhood conditions, locations to shelters, and other considerations, but generally a morning time. Again, avoiding duplicate counting is one of the real key guidelines for the scheduling. And then the other thing that we're looking to do, and it's in progress right now, is the development of a local or regional coordinator position where we'll have someone to help liaise with us in between the outreach teams, the program workers, as well as the volunteer teams on how to effectively cover their particular area. A good example of this, came up on our call yesterday, where the Tri-Valley group had representatives from outreach programs, program staff, and even elected officials. And they were really encouraged by the opportunity they had to effectively, divvy up the routes for their Tri-Valley area and cover the dense areas with their outreach folks and put together teams that reflected the knowledge and skills that they all had. And we're hoping that we can bring that same sort of coordination in other parts of the county, which again is a little bit of a contrast to the more centralized organizational effort that we've done previously. And then similar to previous years, we'll be doing a survey which will get to some of the subpopulation data detail that's required for the HUD reporting, the homeless data exchange information on subpopulations. And in some areas, with some jurisdictions, we'll be looking to do a little bit of an oversample for those cities that wanted to have a more customized city-specific report. This is also the survey is a place where we're really excited this year to address some of the race and equity and justice questions that are so important. And we want to make sure that we take the opportunity that we have in the PIT survey to get a little window into how that impacts the folks that are experiencing homelessness in Alameda County. So those survey efforts and the text of that survey effort is in a pretty advanced stage right now, but I think everyone's feeling good about the progress made so far. In addition to that, as with other counts, we feel that having customized strategies that help us recognize and plan for the diversity of the population are important. So we have some special population outreach efforts that will continue in 2022. The foremost of which is the youth count. Again, this is a result of experience where we've noticed that while we do enumerate many youth in our general count effort that I just described, we also miss a lot of youth that don't commingle with the more general population of adults. And so we found that afternoons and evenings, early evenings, are a good time to enumerate unaccompanied youth. And we'll be doing that again this year with a hotspot effort coordinated by youth-only teams that will be supported by youth advocate agencies who will drive them around to predetermined hotspot locations. We'll also have something we call Come and Be Counted events, which will be at unhoused youth day service sites that youth are comfortable with, and we'll try and profile them at these locations. And in general, we'll certainly look for any unaccompanied youth under 25, but we do expect this year, as in all past years, for this transition aged youth or TAY group will more generally be found in our general count in the morning. Encampments are another big area, and we'll be working with outreach staff to enumerate them. We have some creative strategies which we hope will again work, where we'll maybe have some embedded reporters. In other words, people with lived experience who live in remote or difficult to access encampments will report on the head count of folks in those encampments on pit day. We're also looking for some vehicle outreach and some efforts to better enumerate people living in vehicles, people and families. What's worked well elsewhere has been some dedicated vehicle routes, obviously working with safe parking staff. Those are all great avenues. And what we found is that if you live in a vehicle, you've kind of got a different migration patterns within your county. And it's really important to integrate currently experiencing vehicle homelessness folks on your teams. And we're able to avoid duplication of that with a convention of noting the last 4 digits of a license plate. And then last, but certainly not least, we're going to continue to try and better enumerate unsheltered families. This is an area which is vexed pit count enumerators all over the country from the very beginning, because unsheltered families are very difficult to enumerate in a pit count because of a lot of interventions that they'll experience with their children, and they're really hard to find in a general pit plan. We find that most unsheltered families are in a variety of different living situations, a lot of double ups, private property, in vehicles, and are challenging to be reflected on our normal routes. We're looking to see what we can potentially do in our survey sampling approach to better profile unsheltered families. But again, one of the problems we have is the prevalence of the survey responses of unsheltered families, and the numbers are relatively low. So statistical extrapolation is limited, and again, something we'll continue to do, but I'm not sure how successful we'll be able to profile that experience. We're also, as part of the effort to get better with it, we're looking this year to interact more, and it's already started with some of the family homeless advocates that are out there, and learning from them and the outreach efforts that they go through to better outreach to them. As you may or may not know, what HUD really mandates on reporting an unsheltered family is that you have to be able to confirm where an unsheltered family slept on the night of the 24th. So you have to have live information on where they slept to be able to be included in the reporting. So sources like HMIS and the school district McKinney-Vento lists, all of those require a phone call or a validation of a sleeping location be included in an unsheltered count. So that's kind of the big picture on what we're doing, and we'll one additional thing that we mentioned is it was mentioned briefly earlier. We've used paper data collection forms in the past. We'll be using an online smartphone application to document observations with all the teams. There are pre-assignment GIS interactive maps that we'll be using to divide up routes between the various strata of route participants we have. And there'll obviously be some management oversight tools with those. So we continue to have the accountability and the data quality that we all hope to have. And as Kathy said, that electronic automation has the benefit of potentially more advocates. It has the potential for more accuracy, but also a quicker processing of some of the data that might help inform some immediate release of the data, which is not formally able to be even shared until it's submitted to HUD, which is typically at the end of April, the very beginning of May. And this will all help us, this automation will help us speed up that data delivery to folks. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we can take questions or comments or address anything in chat. You're our facilitator, and I'll follow your lead.
Actually, I'm a guest at this meeting, and so I will defer to Katie and Chelsea. I didn't see anything in the chat, Peter.
Okay.
Does anyone have any questions about the pit count or anything that was heard? Hannah, go ahead.
This is Hannah. Thank you again, both of you, for the work that you're doing with the pit count and just in the planning and all of that. A couple of things that I was thinking about after the youth pit count meeting, just I guess a question for clarity. So I know we talked about doing this kind of like multi-pronged methodology approach, having like these hubs that are, youth serving organizations potentially where youth can come and kind of maybe self-identify and also receive resources and, make it more of like a food event. And then also for the kind of the street outreach part, it's a visual count, right? So you're not actually, I guess my question is like, what does that look like? You're kind of assuming someone is unhoused? Is that okay.
No, our research shows that assuming doesn't lead to good data at all.
Okay.
So we do use a screening tool.
Okay.
That looks at two core questions at minimum. One is what was their housing situation in the prior evenings? So the night of January 24th into the morning of January 25th, and then age. What we have learned from our efforts in the past is that even when we have youth that are saying, oh, for sure that person is 18 to 24, that when we go and ask their age, we've had as high as 30-year-olds be identified by youth peers. And it's easy if you're, for a woman, hair's in a ponytail, no makeup, hoodie on. So no, it is not, it is a visual count to identify potential people. And then the youth and their team leads will approach those potential young adults and ask that question from the screener. It is very scripted out. They'll mark down the responses. And there are even protocols for if the person refuses to answer any of the questions or doesn't want to participate, then the youth are guided in kind of how to record that as part of that process as well. We do also gather information so that we can work on deduplicating, so that information about people that we might catch in the evening hours, if we saw them in the morning, the statistical analytics process accounts for some deduplication of that.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. That is super helpful.
Clarifying, right? Because otherwise, too many assumptions.
And I probably heard it, and I have so much information coming in right now, but I'm like, count. How can you visually count if somebody left?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, Hannah, just I don't want to belabor it too much, but one of the things that we find really works well is that when you have the youth infused teams that are the local neighborhoods, they tend to know a lot of the youth that they see through their other social engagements. So that really helps hone in on areas, but it even goes down to the personal level. They know names, they know backgrounds, they know a lot of that info. And as Kathy said, we do a validation of, age and where they slept, but that's the beauty of that. And that outreach effort is important to complement the come and be counted service center, effort, because there's a lot of youth that don't like going to service centers. They don't like all the people. They may have a beef with the center staff. There's a million different reasons why they're not joiners. So we really want to make sure that we're going out on the streets and doing an outreach effort. Otherwise, we're going to miss somebody, and we don't want to.
Paul had a question in chat. Does the count get conducted if weather doesn't permit? And the answer is yes. No, regardless of the weather, the count will go on. So volunteers will be instructed, and outreach teams and our provider mix in part of their training to be prepared for all kinds of weather. So whether that means raincoats and boots, winter coats, umbrellas, whatever it is, we will be going out unless there is some very freak weather phenomenon, like think earthquake, hurricane, tsunami. I don't know, but other than that, we will be out in those early morning hours and in the late afternoon.
We didn't really get into the weeds a little bit on our planning and logistics, but there will be regular communications with everyone that's being organized into the pit count. So there'll be emails, there'll be training videos. For youth, we have orientation sessions. There'll be copies of the route maps, which will be shared with teams that take on a given route so they can study it, do a dry run, take their highlighter and highlight particular areas they want to go to or spend extra time in. So things like, weather updates and street smart tips, like what to wear on point in time count day, all of that stuff will be shared with everybody that comes on board. And there's an 800 helpline that you can call, and there'll be a live body that will walk you through whatever wonder you have on what to do.
Paul, I see your hands up. Is that a new question?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I'm just thinking from my point of view, like let's say if it was raining really bad, wouldn't that lead to like an incomplete count? Because like I feel like certain people would not sleep where they normally sleep.
We do know that weather affects the count. And that's true across the country, like even in places where there are severe snowstorms, for example, friends and family might be more willing to let somebody come in and sleep in their house or even in a garage on private property that is harder for people to count. So we do know that weather influences the number of people that we count on any given day. We don't have the nimbleness to adjust our day of the count based on the weather.
Paul, when you get everybody together, like we had in 2019, there might be 500 people that are all doing something around the pit count, and getting a big boat like that to move is a big job. And we found that once we stop it because of weather, getting the ship back back onto the water is kind of tough. So your point is absolutely right, but we pray for good January weather.
We have seen it cause a little bit of a dip perhaps in our volunteers, but still having enough volunteers to be able to do the work. And we also have an opportunity when we submit the data to HUD to explain what we think are the factors that affected whether our count went up or whether our count went down. One of those factors certainly will be weather, if that happens to be the case on that particular day that we're out doing the count.
I have a question. I find it just kind of surprising and puzzling that there's an inclination towards not utilizing lived experience guides, I guess in some regions or some tracts, but rather relying on the knowledge that outreach staff already possess. I'd just like to hear more about how that is, why that's happening, because that strikes me as very counterintuitive.
Well, I can address a little bit. There's not really a reluctance to integrate lived experience, but one of the things that we need to do by working through the outreach networks is work within some of the rules of engagement that they all have. Many outreach, we're strongly encouraging all the outreach staff to recruit and integrate lived experience persons onto their teams. So very commonly, for example, in the pitch we made just the other day, there's a 2 to 3 person outreach team. And our preference is that 2 to 3 person outreach team be split into 3 separate teams and have 3 lived experience persons recruited and to go out with them. Unfortunately, we have heard from some outreach teams that have said that they have their own staff and their own routes with a lot of lived experience, frequently a lot of lived experience participants, and they feel that they have that lived experience voice on their teams already. The other larger question that we've had is that we're certainly very COVID concerned, and we don't want to do anything because at this point we don't really know what's going to happen at the end of January with any breakthrough COVID surges or new variants or anything else. And frankly, for many of us, we would anything that would potentially endanger or expose lived experience folks to anything COVID that was out of our control is something that gives us great pause. So we've decided that we would take a more conservative approach on integrating guides with a more general public and have taken those cautionary steps. So I don't know if I'm completely answering, where you were going with that, Katie, but that's the general organizational approach.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Just as a quick follow-up. So what you were saying about the fact that there, has been ongoing engagement with people who have lived experience, that makes sense to me. Is there like a metric in place, or at least a concentrated effort to ensure that experience is within the last few years, so that these people are going to have like relevant knowledge in a post-COVID era of where people are likely to congregate or where encampments or parking is going on?
Well, yeah, certainly the ranks of recruitment are, our first choice is from emergency shelters. And the emergency shelter, clients typically have that current street experience that you're talking about. I do want to caution, though, that because the county is so large and we have so much to cover, there'll be a lot of areas where we'll send our lived experience folks into communities and neighborhoods that they won't know very well from their own personal experience. The super high density spots, most of the lived experience people will commonly know, but the value of the lived experience guide is that he or she or that will go into a new neighborhood, they have a great sense of where they would go if they were dropped into this neighborhood, and would lead the team to a spot like that. And they also have a real good value in their observation skills and to help discern who might be experiencing homelessness versus someone who may just be out on the street at that time. So, and then, like you said, we don't like to discourage participation, but the lived experience person who has been off the street, potentially in lived permanent supportive housing or long-term transitional housing, would not be a prioritized recruit, though they wouldn't necessarily be denied.
Thank you. I want to note, just so that the committee members are aware, that this is an action item requiring approval from the HUD CoC committee. I want to make sure that the committee has a chance to ask whatever questions you all may have. Also recognizing we have a pretty tight agenda, but wanting to make sure that any questions the committee has are being answered. And then, of course, there are going to be, and we can put in the chat, multiple opportunities for additional engagement. There's a lot of meetings lined up where further and more detailed questions can be raised as well.
I have a question about the survey. I know there was some feedback requested for the survey. Is that coming to this committee for approval, or has the feedback been incorporated, or where is that stand?
I can speak to that, Simone. So we received feedback from the community, from our planning partners. We're making revisions to the survey, and then we will be posting it to our website with a period for public comment. And that's sort of the next steps moving forward.
And then if I can add to that a little bit, Simone, one of the other items that we're considering is that there's a Bay Area data group on homelessness for all the Bay Area COCs, Santa Clara, Alameda, San Francisco, North Bay, and so on, that are addressing some of the survey questions that look to race and equity, COVID-related questions, disaster impacts on homelessness, etc. And our committee is being informed by their work as well.
Peter, just to let you know, I'm attending that meeting tomorrow, so.
Nice.
And Simone, to answer your specific question in regards to what the HUD CoC committee votes on, the committee votes on the methodology. The community weighs in on the actual survey design, but the committee here votes on the methodology approval.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry. What?
Arnell, were you asking a question, or were you making a motion?
sorry.
That's okay. Are there any more questions about the pit count? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the methodology.
Thank you, Josh. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Marnell.
Okay, roll call vote. Simone,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Paulette,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Tunisia,
Yes.
Marnell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. I have one more question. Is there, I don't know if anyone has it ready, but would you be able to put the link to sign up in the chat for anyone who hasn't signed up yet to volunteer and may be interested? And then also, is there a special sign up if you have some experience or expertise for the youth count? Is there a separate sign up?
So there's some tiers and layers to the answer. So if you're interested in just communication about the homeless count, I'm guessing Katie will put a link in there in the chat so that you can get and be informed about all the communication coming out of Everyone Home on behalf of the homeless count effort. The registration to sign up for homeless count will be going live the week after Thanksgiving. And so that is not quite yet available, but stay tuned. You will hear from Everyone Home when it is available, and you'll probably see it all over social media and everywhere else, given how excellent Everyone Home is at blasting out communication about things. And then finally, the third place to plug in is if you are part of an outreach team or supervise an outreach team. We are currently looking at recruiting outreach teams. Please contact me. And then the last part of that, Simone, specific with relationship to the youth meeting or the youth count in the youth work, the next time we will have a youth count meeting is December the 13th from 2 to 4 p.m. And Everyone Home will let folks know to sign up, and then you'll get the link for the Zoom meeting related to that. But it's coming up again, December 13th, 2 p.m.
And thank you, Kathy and Peter. Appreciate you coming today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all. Take care.
And have
Bye.
a good rest of your afternoon.
I know.
Move on to agenda item number 9, HMIS oversight update. And I believe we have Mike Keller and Ming to speak to this item.
Yes, and before we do that, I just want to kind of set the stage. Our HMIS Oversight Committee has been, of course, meeting regularly, reevaluating and trying to plan for the future in regards to the work plan for HMIS Oversight, and has had a number of conversations and discussions in regards to trying to ensure that their work plan and priorities are in line with where the HUD CoC board would like to prioritize items. And so upon request from the chair and the committee, I came to Simone and asked for this to be agendized so that they could present their question and or provide updates. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Mike.
Hi, everyone. And I think Nick is going to be presenting as well. Nick, are you there? Okay. So yeah, as Chelsea mentioned, we're just, we've gone through a process of really trying to develop a work plan for this year. It's involved a lot of meetings and discussion just about kind of how things have gone historically with the committee structure, and really the focus of what we want to try to achieve this year. So what we wanted to do today was just kind of present our understanding of what the committee has been intended to focus on over the past, really a couple of years, or about 3 years now since it was created. Talk about the MOU a little bit that's in place, just to make sure that those priorities still seem in line, and then kind of just present a draft of our work plan to make sure that the committee really feels we're on the right track in terms of if there are priorities they would like to see us focus on more or less, or that just aren't really listed in the work plan. Did you want to kind of present that, Nick?
Yeah, sure. May I share my screen? Or would somebody who is facilitating from the Everyone Home team be able to share the documents? If they have the, okay. All right, so I guess we'll start with this. This presentation or PowerPoint got drafted from the MOU between Everyone Home, the COC, and Everyone Home on behalf of the COC and the HMIS lead team. The two slides are how the presentation has existed prior to now. For the subsequent slides with the white background, that's just a recent update that we've done to be able to help us to distill and share the information in a way that continues to engage folks. What you see as we work through this is that some responsibilities were identified for the HMIS lead as well as for the COC. And so one of our questions now concerns what is the priority of those responsibilities that were aligned, and also from our perspective as a liaison in many ways and as an arm of the COC to help with the strengthening the HMIS system-wide, what priorities can we focus on between now and say mid-year, which is basically the period next year where we'll be looking to do some of the transitions as far as like with governance is concerned towards one of the COC mandates. Our conversations so far basically have been really about trying to unearth what the different stakeholders feel are their scope and those scope, the priority of those scopes. If you look at this particular slide here, which was one of the early, this is a 2019 document. In a lot of our conversations so far, the HMIS lead team has pointed out that maybe some of these priorities don't necessarily align with what they need to accomplish currently. And so one of the things that we have to revisit for the HMIS lead team for the segments in green on the left would be which of those priorities may not be currently at the top of their list for us to look at where we can align to move forward over the next few months. The items on the right in red are really the items that we want to be able to focus on with the COC board. Some of the items that the COC board identified relate directly to the HMIS lead and others don't at this point. A clear example of that would be, for instance, say meeting HUD mandates is one of the priorities that would still align, and the sub items that fall under that, like with the monitoring of the HMIS lead on an annual basis. But there are other priorities that don't necessarily relate as directly to the HMIS lead. One of those current main priorities is in terms of the transition around governance and the move forward to streamline and merge committees. We want to have a clearer sense, I think, to be able to help us to work productively with the HMIS team in terms of what kind of balance we can look to strike with that. What I can tell you is that based on what we have discussed so far over the last year, especially in the last several months, is that the priorities right now seem to focus on a number of key things. One would be deepening the priority of the HMIS, and that's both the HMIS lead as well as the HMIS stakeholders across the system generally. There are a couple of ways that we want to approach that. One would be in terms of strengthening and deepening the spaces in which providers are engaged, and two would be leveraging HMIS lead, an HMIS funder liaison position that helps to better help funders to focus and expand their conversations with providers about data related points specifically, outside of policy and governance issues outside of that. Those are a couple of things I want to mention here. So we want to have some conversation, I think, begin to open the room, expand the room for conversation with the HMIS, with the CoC, and what it looks like as the HMIS oversight to be more effectively communicating with the with the CoC board. In addition to that, what we want to be able to do is also show you some of what we've looked at as far as the draft of our work plan is concerned. The work plan, we've hashed out some items through about June of this year. Those items are still very transitional. So at this point, I think it's about inviting dialogue and questions. And again, asking you in terms of how that jives or aligns with the priorities that you are foreseeing as a board and as the overarching governance anchor for our CoC. I think I'll stop there. Mike?
So maybe what we could do is just pull up the draft of the work plan that we've created, Tirza.
Yes, it was, I apologize. I didn't realize that screen sharing had paused. There it is. For some reason, when I pull this up, it pauses. That's very odd. I've never seen that before. One moment, let me try it one more time. It pauses. If you'll give me just a moment, let me see if I can fix it.
May I speak in the meantime?
Please.
One of the things that we recognize is one of the top priorities, as I said, moving forward, is about what governance and transition looks like for us. And that's one of the key areas I think we want to be able to have to look to strengthen the communication with the CoC board. What we've learned recently is that there is a move now to begin to have more direct conversations in terms of what that looks like. We don't necessarily have clarity as a group yet in terms of what our timeline looks like, or how, to what extent we can drive the timeline to merge with the RBA committee to move to the system, to evolve towards a system impact committee. So those are some things that we want to be able to get, I think, more information, not necessarily today, but over the course of the next month or so, to help out to flesh out some more of the work plan items. There are still some questions that we want to work through, and some strategy that we can look to implement as far as strengthening the work plan is concerned. So we are going through that process now of prioritizing, just identifying what the top priorities are from month to month for the next 7 months through June.
So if I
let me go attend to
that. Sure, Mike, did you want to go over the work plan, or?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of context. I mean, I think what we're trying to accomplish with the work plan, our main focus on it is really to be about a few things. The first would be, how can we try to support the HMIS lead at HCD with increasing and improving data quality across the system. So some of our strategies we've talked about for that include the funder liaison role that Nick mentioned, to try to leverage the role of funders in assisting, requiring, reaching out to, communicating to their grantees on data quality issues. Because, I think we feel that they have some pull that may not be utilized at all times right now, or there might be ways we could work with the committee to kind of jointly reach out to people or organizations that are having data quality issues, and provide support and direction on correcting those. Another area we really are focused on, I think, the monitoring of the HMIS lead. It was originally on the work plan for around this time that we did it in January of 2021. But what we really are recommending to do is use this year to kind of build a tool and a process that works, and really conduct the monitoring around the end of June. That's a time that seemed to work well for the HMIS lead, or as well as it can. But we would use that time between now and then to build a monitoring process that can then be transitioned to the System Impact Committee. And then I think in addition to that, I'm trying to think of what else. There's a few other things we really want to accomplish through some work groups. So kind of, looking at how we can better review more targeted data, perhaps to assist with things like identifying trends where data quality markers are falling short. How can we include the race equity measures and things along those lines? So, that's really sort of where we're thinking. I think what we're looking for is just feedback on that. If there's key areas that may not be reflected here, or that maybe might need to be called out separately, one possible idea would be, I think we're thinking to look at data quality within coordinated entry in some of these, but does that need to be looked at separately? But then also, so we do kind of want to figure out how to add that in, or, what focus the committee may want to prioritize on that as we go through the coordinated entry transition. But then as we get towards the end of this year, really looking at starting to connect with the RBA committee, which there's a lot of overlap in what they're doing, since they're pulling data from HMIS for a lot of the different things that they're measuring and looking at. How can we kind of better streamline what the HMIS Oversight Committee is doing with them, and then, talking about how that can kind of be rolled together as we look at moving into a new governance structure. So, with that, I think I'll kind of stop and just want to kind of see what people's feedback is on that, or if there are things that they're concerned about in terms of timeframes we've identified, things that aren't represented here, or maybe need to be represented in a different way.
If I might, thank you so much, Mike and Nick. I just
Sure.
want to add one last slide that Nick did not have a chance to get to, and that came up as an part of the conversations with HCD. In our work groups, we looked at the MOU, which Nick mentioned was executed in 2018, and HCD looked at their priorities here as captured in the MOU. And as we started to develop the work plan, determine which of those priorities make sense in 2021. Nick and Mike did a great job here creating that comparison list. And what you will see is that HCD's priorities are compliance, funder liaison, that was just mentioned and discussed, coordinated entry, data quality plans and reports, and then the major reports in our COC, which is the longitudinal system analysis, point in time, housing inventory count, and system performance measures. And so what you will see is those are reflected, those priorities are reflected in the work plan. And the numbers that you see, letters and numbers and parentheses, are from the actual MOU document, and this is the section in which those priorities were identified. Thank you. Then we open it up and I return it to Mike and Nick.
Okay, thank you all. So we do have a little limited time on this topic, and I think the plan was to discuss it further and then bring it back to the agenda at a later time. but I
Yeah.
want to know if anyone has any initial comments or questions about the HMIS Oversight Committee and their request for some guidance and their request, well, I don't know that it's a request, but suggestions and ideas about partnering with RBA and a request to be more collaborative with us as a committee. Any initial comments or questions? Melvin, I see you have a hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Simone. I do really appreciate the presentation. And I've been hearing a lot about racial equity and being able to utilize data. So what I'm curious about is, has there been a matrix developed or criteria set that will allow us to see that equity has actually been achieved? So, because if we're going to build out, this function within the system, like what exactly do we even know what we're measuring? And then how would we know when we actually achieve it? So just curious about that.
Thank you for that question, Melvin. A part of where we're going with our governance is really getting to be able to monitor equity. We're starting to see it infused in some of the areas that there's monitoring, but definitely the expectation is that there will be the creation of a racial equity work group whose main role and responsibility will be creating and determining what data points need to be tracked in each of these committees. So we will be having engaging conversations, opportunity. That committee will be open to the public as well, to develop what the racial equity metrics should be. But I will share that both the RBA committee and the HMIS committee have been talking about this, especially internal staff at Everyone Home. And it's also looking at our system performance measures and thinking about ways that we can infuse race equity data points there too. But to answer your question in terms of not just reporting out on it, but how do we track our success with it, where we will see that happening in a more real way will be once we stand up that racial equity work group that creates these data points that help support each of the committee. And then we create a matrix and an opportunity to monitor along the way.
Got it. Thank you, Thank you, Chaplain.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Melvin, for the question. And I just wanted to go over the points that I got to make sure I got everything, Nick and Mike. My understanding is that the HMIS Oversight Committee is looking to strengthen the communication with the HUD CoC Committee, be more collaborative. You're looking at merging with the RBA Committee and wanted some feedback on that potentially. Looking at how you can better support the HCD HMIS lead. Planning on building out a workable tool to monitor the HMIS lead and looking to do that monitoring in June. And also looking to support organizations with data quality concerns. Are those the main points?
Yeah, I think I'd bucket some of those as capacity deepening, Simone. A couple of those as deepening the HMIS capacity of the HMIS lead as well as the system generally. Okay. Just as far as identifying our priorities concerned.
Yeah, I think any way in which we can sort of deepen our capacity in this realm is really a key area of focus because I think there is a lack of capacity in some areas as it relates to HMIS. And I think in terms of the communication between the CoC and the HMIS Oversight Committee, we exist currently in the current structure in a space between the HMIS lead and the CoC. So, I think it's about we kind of regularly get feedback and talk with the HMIS lead, and we just want to make sure that we're representing priorities from both sides when we make decisions, and kind of try to strike that balance. So that's really where we're coming from on that point.
Thank you, Nick and Mike. And Tirzay, last call for any initial questions or comments before we move on.
The only thing I would add, Simone, is that HCD had an opportunity to present updated priorities. We wanted to also, Mike and Nick wanted, as well as HCD, the appearance today to give the HUD CoC an opportunity to understand that HCD has revised their priorities, and that we put together a work plan that is reflective of those priorities. Wanted to give the HUD CoC that information, as well as to let you know that we intend to return early in the year, probably February, with a final draft of the work plan for HUD CoC approval.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 10 and 11 with Colleen from HICSA. We'll start with the emergency housing vouchers, and then we'll move on to the action item for annual seat assessment, which was brought up last month, but I did a little presentation kind of. So Colleen will give more of an official overview of what's happening with that.
Yeah, sorry, just give me 1 second here to share my screen. Okay, so starting with the EHV update, as you all know from past updates and just from your involvement in this work, Alameda County, across the county, across the 4 different housing authorities, was allocated 875 emergency housing vouchers as part of the American Rescue Plan. There were 70,000 vouchers allocated nationwide. And the Office of Homeless Care and Coordination, as the coordinated entry management entity, is working with the PHAs on referrals to those vouchers. So all of the referrals come through coordinated entry. And so this is a little bit of a snapshot of where we're at in terms of the process. So there's 875 vouchers. Like I said, 868 people have been matched to EHV. 455 applications have been submitted to PHAs. 222 vouchers have been issued and 17 have been leased up. There's a few contributing factors to sort of the slower lease up timeline, but there is a group getting together with PHA representatives, nonprofit folks, and NFLers from our office who's really leading the EHV work to talk about how we can kind of streamline the RTA process, which seems like it's kind of the where things are getting stuck is with the RTAs. But I'm really encouraged to see that 455 applications have been submitted. They're not short applications. So I know this has been a lot of work in the community to get this done and get us to this point. And to see that we have over 200 vouchers issued is also really exciting. And then I also wanted to check in, and just to mention, this data is from last week, so there may be some slight adjustments to the current date, but and then the EHV set-asides. So the 10% set aside for the gender-based violence community, there's been 26 interest forms submitted, which is sort of the first step in the process. And Building Futures is partnering in this process to serve as sort of an administrative lead doing a similar role to what OHCC is doing for the general vouchers, is sort of reviewing applications, matching people to PHAs, et cetera, in order to ensure that there's that safety and anonymity factor for the gender-based violence community. And then there's the 9% transitional age youth set aside. There's been 152 notifications that have been sent out, 54K assigned to a PHA, and 21 applications among that group submitted to PHAs. So that's a little bit of numbers for all of you today. Does anyone have questions about this or anything else related to EHV?
Hi, Colleen. This is How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here. I was just wondering if there's any understanding about the not discrepancy, but so there's 54 TAE that were assigned to PHA, but only 21 applications submitted. like understanding the discrepancy?
Why is there a difference?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. So there's a couple of different steps in the process. So the first step for the workflow for the TAE, or one of the steps, is for them to submit an interest form. And the reason for that is to know that, they're interested in applying, but also to hopefully match them with the right PHA so that they don't have to go through a process of porting if we can avoid it. So the 54 folks submitted interest forms and were assigned to PHAs, but then there's the process of actually completing the application and the supporting documents. So the people who haven't submitted yet, but are within that group of folks assigned to a PHA, are working on those documents right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question just about, it says leased up, so I assume that means those are people who are actively using a voucher versus voucher issued. Are those people who have a voucher, but they're still looking for a unit to accept it, or what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so the voucher issued means that the person has been approved by the PHA and they've attended a briefing and had a voucher issued. The leased up number, like exactly what you said, are people who are actually using that voucher in a home right now. Typically, a lot of the people who are in the voucher issued category and not in the lease up category would be looking for housing, which is the case for some of them, but it's also the case that there's quite a few people in that category who are actually currently housed in the PRHT program, the Project Roomkey Housing Transitions Program. So it's a matter of basically getting the subsidy to switch over, which includes the RTA process, which is both done with the landlord and with the individual. So, and then there's also an inspection that has to happen before the person can be leased up with the EHV voucher. So some of those 222 people are actually housed currently through the PRHT program and are in the process of doing the switch over to the EHV subsidy. Did that answer that question?
Yes, so they won't be relocating. They just have to go through like a paper process.
Exactly, yeah. As long there are a couple of situations where either the landlord or the individual doesn't want to do the RTA, and so those are being worked through. But yes, for the most part, the idea is that people who are in PRHT would be able to stay in the unit that they're in now and use the EHV voucher there long term.
And last question, I don't know how else to word it, but at what point do we start getting concerned that the vouchers aren't going to all be utilized?
Not yet, I don't think, at least I'm not. I think this is actually, moving at a relatively consistent pace. And when we think about and talk to other communities, we're not behind. But there is some policies and some process being talked about and put in place to kind of decide when we move on to matching more people. So I think that's really the question too, is we're still working with the priority groups right now for these vouchers. And then at some point we'll want to give other people the opportunity to take advantage of this, of this opportunity if we're not able to utilize all the vouchers among the priority group. So that's really the kind of the process, is making sure that if folks have had, ample time to submit their applications and that there's a service provider who's been actively seeking to engage them in that process, and that it's not, not happening, that other people are given the opportunity to apply.
And one last question, to clarify total matched, does that mean that people were actually notified and confirmed that they know that they've been matched?
Well,
Or
total
are some of
match
these
means
people-
that we notified the provider working with the individual and made sure that there's a provider assigned to work with them.
Okay.
And then the providers maybe need a little time to find that person, to get in touch with them. But it means that there's an individual. And I do want to say, like, The gender-based violence workflow is a little bit different. So it's actually the provider community identifying people. So that's partly why you might see a discrepancy, for example, between the total vouchers and the matched, is because that's set aside. We're not matching individual names because it's really the providers in that community who are trying to find the folks who are within the priority group in order to work on those applications. But for everyone else, there's people who are part of the priority group, either based on, their status in PRHT or in Safer Ground program or in TAY rapid rehousing or transitional housing or TAY high on the housing queue. So there's sort of all those different places that people are being matched through. And that's part of the conversation too, is like, when do we move on past that priority group and give other people an opportunity? But we also want to really make sure that the people who need this, who are in the priority group and who are interested in engaging in the process, have the chance to do that.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions, comments? Thank you for that update, Colleen.
Yeah.
Move on to the next item.
Okay, I'm gonna actually move back to the beginning here. And maybe it would be helpful first to just show the tool. So I don't know how much people want me to kind of go back, because I know this was talked about a lot in the last meeting. But I wanted to just orient you. I think my piece here is to orient you to what the coordinated entry self-assessment tool is. So the self-assessment tool is a tool that's created by HUD for the coordinated entry system, and in this case, the coordinated entry management entity, to do a self-assessment to basically see where we're at in different sort of areas of work within coordinated entry. So they actually have a tool that we used in this process. And so I'm going to quickly show you that, just to sort of give you a little bit more of a sense of what the actual tool is like, and then I'll talk about sort of some key findings. I also want to mention that the assessment that we're talking about today is actually assessing coordinated entry in 2020. So we've made a lot of changes since 2020. And so that's also an aspect of the conversation, because some of this is things that were different in 2020 that have been changed in 2021. And those will be reflected on the self-assessment for 2021. So this goes through the different categories: planning, access, assessment, prioritization, referral, data management, and evaluation. And it basically asks, it's typically either kind of a yes or no with a check, with an opportunity to provide some information and some notes about whether there's a certain criteria that's been met. This isn't necessarily something that has to go back to HUD. It's just an internal, the opportunity to have an internal evaluation, kind of see where we're at. So these different sections ask different questions. So an example establishes and updates a coordinated entry process in compliance with HUD requirements, and then goes through different criteria. So this is sort of what the tool looks like. And then we went through this and also added some notes for things that maybe aren't really obvious within our system or need some clarification. And then from there, I just want to point out a few kind of summary items. And the System Coordination Committee has looked through this as well. Are you seeing my PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2020, one of the things as we're going through that we noticed is that COVID response was obviously a significant area of focus, and coordinated entry implemented targeted outreach to vulnerable individuals to access safe non-congregate housing. So there was a lot of work that sort of shifted to a focus of getting people into a safe space where they can be housed and not have to, be able to isolate, be able to do the things that all of us get to do with a home to keep ourselves safe from COVID. And then also implemented temporary resource prioritization policy that you all were involved with to ensure that individuals at high risk for complications if infected with COVID had access to housing resources. And there was significant planning related to coordinated entry 2.0 in 2020 to be implemented in 2021. So just to sort of orient you in terms of, time seems like it's all meshing together these days sometimes. So in 2020, there was a lot of the planning happening for the implementation that happened in 2021. So the things that have been implemented with coordinated entry 2.0 had not started in 2020, but the planning for it was an area of focus. And then trainings were held and made available online that weren't previously, partly in response to COVID, to make sure that people had access to training when needed, including training for conducting coordinated entry assessments. And then just kind of going through this and thinking about 2021, because that's where we are now. Coordinated entry policies are being developed and implemented countywide. So looking at sort of some of the things that in 2020, you can see that we were working on or wanting to work on in 2021. Housing problem solving implemented as a key aspect of coordinated entry, training being made readily available, further coordination between the gender-based violence and DV system of care and coordinated entry is in development. A crisis queue developed to be used to match to shelter and transitional housing resources, centralized matching to housing navigation, standard grievance policy adopted and implemented in April, and after hours matching to shelter being explored. So that's a little bit about kind of what's happening in 2020, or some of those spaces in 2020 where maybe we have some notes or we have a box unchecked that we all want to work towards getting checked in our 2021 review. Anyone have questions on that?
Last month, there were some questions about why exactly it was being postponed and when and how it would occur. Are there any more questions on that? Or are we ready to have a motion? Simone, do you want, it might be helpful to clarify what the motion was for, because it's not for the self-assessment, but it's to use the self-assessment, but it was not brought forth by us, so that might be helpful. Right.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Colleen? I'm sorry.
I can't, so the motion would be to use the self-assessment this year. It says postpone self-assessment, but okay, it's to use the self-assessment this year and to postpone the HUD CoC or the RBA performing an assessment of coordinated entry until next year sometime, once CES 2.0 has some time to actually work, so that there will be something to evaluate. So right now there really isn't much to evaluate, since CES 2.0 is just getting started and organizations are just getting trained on it.
And thanks, Simone. Just to make sure too that the record reflects, this initially was voted on by the RBA committee back in August. The RBA committee recommended postponing the monitoring. It ultimately went to our SCC committee, who also agreed to postpone the monitoring of the coordinated entry. So they voted on that to be presented here to HUD CoC. So of course we're streamlining our governance moving forward, but it went through these various committees. And what was identified at the time was that there would still be the self-assessment that's required by HUD that has been conducted. Colleen was asked to present on that self-assessment that was presented at the SCC meeting, of course, also now presented here. But ultimately, what's before this committee is adopting SCC's recommendation to postpone the coordinated entry monitoring until sometime next year, once coordinated entry is completely underway.
Thank you, Chelsea and Colleen, for this great summary. It's really helpful. The only concern I have is not having this information for the next NOFO round. So I think it'd be really useful for us. And I know it's not a requirement. I know it's not necessary to have it before, the summer of next year, but I think it would be really nice to be able to rely on that in our application. So just throwing that out there.
And for some reason, I also am having a little, I don't know, I'm having a little bit of a problem with delaying it again.
I'll allow Katie, if you're here, to kind of speak to, I think the intention was to postpone, but not indefinitely. And so what needs to happen now, once there's an agreement, or if there is an agreement, would be really a committee coming together to begin to plan out what that monitoring will look like. What will happen likely is that committee will meet a few times, and by the time that committee comes to get a vote of approval on the monitoring, we are probably at the time where that process would start. So I think there's conversation happening with SCC. RBA is on standby. Ultimately, we've kind of talked about this over the last few months. It's just unfortunate that it's taken some time to get to you all, but we would be currently in the process of now planning for a monitoring to occur next year.
And just to expand on that.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if there was any outdate that we could include in the motion. Maybe 6 months out, something.
It's my understanding that an assessment has been done, but it was done by HICSA. Is that correct, Colleen?
Yeah, so the self-assessment was done.
And
So
just
sorry.
I just want to clarify the difference between the coordinated entry evaluation and the coordinated entry self-assessment. So Colleen is referring to the self-assessment, which they did themselves. The coordinated entry evaluation was conducted by the REBA committee the last time in 2019. And it was a full comprehensive report that had all sorts of data collection, including focus groups and analysis of HMIS data. It's a pretty hefty project that the REBA committee previously has undertaken. The vote that happened regarding postponing the coordinated entry evaluation, not the self-assessment, was done in August with the REBA committee, and the vote and the suggestion was to postpone until next year, which is 2022, which we are nearly upon as we speak. So this is not saying delaying forever. And we're all aware of the needs of this data and the importance of this data for things like the NOFO, Josh. So appreciate your comment there. I think that, there is not an exact date that was recommended when this should occur, because it was unclear when coordinated entry would be fully fleshed out and be ready to be evaluated. But the recommendation was to just postpone until 2022 and then can, further deliberate about what that might look like. But just because our recommendation happened back in August, things have just gotten delayed. So just want to give you that context, as we were saying, let's just wait until next year, which we're already very close to.
Would it be unreasonable to put in the motion a request to have this done as soon as possible and really trying to get it done before June of 2022? Do you think that's a reasonable request, or do you think that, and is that doable?
I would think so, and I would think that we would want to do it sooner rather than later, right? Because we all need this information. We want to understand how the coordinated entry system is working, and it's as Chelsea was saying, it will be a process and take committee members from different committees to be planning what that evaluation will look like. So the planning could start even if we're not actually actively collecting and analyzing data yet, which maybe Colleen might think, okay, we might want to wait a little bit longer till the system has had more time to get going, but we could still work to plan around what that evaluation would look like and what the questions of importance are for that research and evaluation. So totally.
The other thing I'll throw out there too is that it will be really nice to pair this with the PID information that we're collecting. So if to have all of that be fresh and usable would be really nice.
Absolutely. I think that would be great. We'll have lots of good data and next year to be able to help us with these sorts of projects.
I was just gonna add that, this is Hannah, with the YHGP grant, one of the requirements for our coordinated community plan is ensuring or addressing how the COC will ensure that there's a youth appropriate process for the coordinated entry. So that's something that we have to work through and submit to HUD by March. So we're gonna be working on that, and I don't know how we can collaborate. Collaborate and what that looks like if we're YHGP team is holding conversations, or again, like it's a new process, it's a new system, right? It's a new process. Like we won't know what we don't know until we figure out how it works. But we are thinking about that because it's something that is required as part of our coordinated community plan.
That's great. So assuming that means you're ready to volunteer for this planning committee for the coordinated entry evaluation, right, Hannah?
I just set myself.
We are at time, so I'm going to put forth a motion if anyone wants to alter it or not. If you would like to second it, that's an option too. So I put forth the motion to approve the RBA and SEC recommendation to postpone the CE evaluation and I'll say to have a report back by the end of first quarter, June 2022. So that, I guess that leaves it open where, we can hear an update, but there's not a definitive date that we're asking for it to occur. That works with committee members, if someone can second.
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, one more roll call vote. Simone?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
Paulette?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Tunisia?
Yes.
Marnell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I've got to go, guys. I've got another Zoom meeting.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask if Katie Barnett, if you can maybe help me schedule another meeting for us to work on the work plan together, just for HUD CoC committee members only. Hopefully in December, if people aren't available from the holidays, we'll have to do January, but preferably in December. And other than that, our next regular meeting is January 18th. Happy holidays, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.